From One of One Production Studios, broadcasting from NYC, you are listening to Unexpected Success with your host, Joy.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Unexpected Success. Today, I'm extremely excited to have in the studio today, Brandice Daniel. For those of you who are not familiar with Brandice, Brandice is the founder of Harlem's Fashion Row, a platform that highlights and promotes brown fashion designers. She's also the co-founder of the Great Girlfriends podcast and conference, a platform that celebrates friendships and friends that support friends, become kind of family. She's also the author, as if that's not enough, right? The author of the book Sponsored, a step-by-step guide for how to get brands to pay for and sponsor your next event. And I mean, and on top of all of that, Brandice, right? She's also an incredible friend, mom, wife, coach, and advisor. Hi. So happy to have you.
I'm sitting over here like, ooh, that sounds good. Who is that?
Right, you. I've had the pleasure of knowing Brandice for about 10 years now. It's crazy to think, right?
I know.
And we met because Brandice, like my husband, hails from the great city of Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes.
So I'm so happy. That was a mouthful. Sorry, but you have so many things that you can I guess highlight. But I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my gosh! So I don't know where to start. Right. So I guess so we know you're from Memphis, and you created all of these amazing platforms. I guess did you always know that you were going to do this? Like, how did this start?
When I tell you I'm the most like, I was like, unexpected success. Yeah, that's me. No, I didn't know I was going to do all of that. I had no idea. I did know that I was a dreamer, and I knew that I dreamed big and that I was willing to work for whatever it is I wanted. That was the only thing I knew about myself.
Now, what was the dream?
I had lots of dreams. So I thought that I was going to own a men's boutique. That was
clothing?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was actually one of my first dreams. And moving to New York was a dream for me. And then there's been so many other things that I wanted to do that were dreams, but now I'm thinking of new dreams. Those are done.
So you accomplished them, and now you keep on going.
Absolutely.
You know, it's so funny. So I think in the very first, I guess my intro podcast, I just kind of talked about how, you know, when you have dreams and you accomplish them, and then once you do one thing, it gets so much easier to then keep on conquering, right? It's like, you know, you don't even realize you're successful, and you're like, wait a minute, that was good. I could do something else. And I can just, and you know, and you just keep on developing and curating and dreaming and then doing and executing.
So true.
So, yeah. So, okay. So first it was a men's boutique. Were you in Memphis at the time?
I was in Atlanta when I had that dream.
Okay.
So I was living in Atlanta. I graduated from college, UT Chattanooga.
Okay.
And moved to Atlanta in search of my love that did not work out.
Okay.
And
so you followed a guy.
I did.
Okay.
And while I was there, I started thinking of what I really wanted to do with my life, because at the time I was working for a home builder, and I was working in like accounts payable, something very different from fashion.
Right.
But I always had, like, my major was fashion merchandising. I knew that was what I wanted to do and what I wanted to work in, but I couldn't figure out like how to get my foot in the door.
Right. And in men's fashion in particular, I guess what made you want to pursue men's fashion as opposed to pursuing women's fashion, right?
I felt like men were super loyal. And so I said, you know
so
what?
Smart.
If I could, you know, get a really great boutique going for men, I know that I could keep their attention. I know that I can keep them coming back.
I'm fascinated by this whole journey, right? Because you also have a platform called the Great Girlfriend. So men's boutique, but Great Girlfriend. So anyway, I want to go through all of these details, right? So, all right. So you're in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You're working for a home builder, doing accounts payable. Miserable.
Yes.
Yeah. So then what did you so what happened? What was the moment when you said, you know what? I'm just done.
Sometimes we can move along and life is going good, right? It's not going great, but it's going good, and you know, you're making money, and You're socializing on the weekends and at night. And so things feel okay.
Yeah.
But there's always this sense that there's something missing. I'm not doing my purpose. I'm not working in the field that I'm supposed to be working in. And you really can't deny it. You can try to ignore it, but you really can't deny it. And so I was living that life,
Right,
that a lot of people live.
Most people.
Right. And so I'm like, I have to do what I'm meant to be doing. But what is that? All I knew was that it was in fashion. And I really didn't have anything that pushed me or gave me enough pressure to make that pivot until my company closed. And so the home builder that I was working for announced that they were closing their Atlanta division. I was making decent money for living in Atlanta at the time and, being 22, 23 years old. But something in me knew that this was my crossroads. I can't explain it, but I knew it so clearly.
I'm getting goosebumps now because I feel like a lot of times most people make pivotal decisions in times of despair. And you and I have discussed this, at your bottom, and I listened to a podcast actually yesterday by, it was of Troy Carter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Troy Carter, but Troy Carter was managing Lady Gaga.
I am.
And, he basically said, you can't fall when you're on the floor. You can't fall from the floor. So if you're on the floor, you have to figure out a way to get up. And in those moments, I find that a lot of people's stories are stories of inspiration, right? Of how they figured out their way to kind of just come off the floor and just win. Yeah. So, okay, please continue. I'm sorry, I got inspired.
No, it's so true though, because had that company not closed, I always wonder what my life would look like. But it was like I knew that was my biggest blessing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have a job. I don't know where I'm going to work next, but I know that this is my sign that I have to do something in fashion. This is my opportunity. This was my open door. The window's open. Let me jump.
Now, did you have cash? Did you have capital?
I didn't have a lot of cash.
Okay.
I didn't. I was 23 years old. I didn't save much. I did get a severance package.
Okay, good.
But I look back now and I realize that I was kind of crazy because people kept offering me jobs. So, when you work for a home builder, you are dealing with so many subcontractors. And so you're dealing with all these companies
people
who I had built relationships with.
Right.
And they kept saying, Brandice, this company is closing. Do you need a job? And I was like, no, I'm going to work in fashion. And so I turned down.
Holy cow.
So I turned
Which
down
is bold.
all these jobs because I just knew it. I cannot explain it, but I was like, if I take another job, if I set my life up around this salary, I won't be able to do. I just knew it was a trap. And I said, this is going to be a trap.
You knew that was a trap.
I knew it was. There has been several things in my life that I knew were going to be traps and that were going to keep me from pursuing New York and my dream. I broke up with a guy I dated in college one time because I told him, you're going to keep me from moving to New York. I know there's something about you that's going to keep me from moving to New York.
Oh my God.
That was at like 20 years old. I didn't move to New York till 28.
You're like, yo, you cool, but
Yeah.
you just you're here, and you're not in my future.
I was like,
Right.
This is a trap. So the same
I love
thing
it.
with this, with this company closing, I was like, this is my opportunity. And so that's when I really started to research, how do I get a job as a buyer? Because at the time I thought I wanted to become a buyer. So I said, how do I get a job as a buyer with a company with no experience, right?
Right.
And then I started finding out about all of these executive training programs that all of these department stores had. And then I started making phone calls to the HR departments and saying, hey, I'm going to be in Houston. I would love an informational just to talk about this program that you have.
Wow.
And once they said, okay, great, I'm available this day, then I would fly to Houston and meet with on my own dime and meet with them for these interviews.
But you knew. You had a
and
plan.
that's how I was getting opportunities to meet with people for these jobs. I would just tell them I was already going to be in the city that day and that I wanted to meet with them. So none of those situations worked out, but so it all landed me back in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I'm from. And I was living there, and you're talking about despair. I mean, I was in such a dark place because I was working part-time at Brooks Brothers. And I was working part-time filing papers at like, I think it was like an AT&T office or something.
Wow. And so your family, so you're, and you moved back in with your mom?
I did.
All right. Do you have siblings?
I do have siblings, but neither one of them were home.
They weren't home.
Yep,
Okay.
I was back home with my
so
mom
you're back
and dad.
home with your mom and dad, what's their attitude towards this dream?
You know, I don't think they didn't want to reject me.
Right. No, of course. No, I get that.
And I think they really did give me the space at that point to figure it out.
Right. Which is important. I think
yeah, they did.
A lot of times, your family and your friends don't mean to be dream killers, but they oftentimes want you to be reasonable, right?
Right.
Be realistic.
Exactly.
And dreaming, it's difficult to be a dreamer and be realistic. Because most of the times the two don't jive, right? They don't. If you're dreaming, you're dreaming. If you're not, you're not. And
right.
So it's great that your parents were actually supportive of giving you space to figure it out.
They were. And you know what's funny, Joy? No one's ever asked me that question.
Really?
So no one has ever. You had to I had to reflect back on that. Right. And I actually don't remember them saying anything.
Right. And they weren't discouraging.
No, they weren't. Which I think I'm about to ask them about that now. Like,
yeah, no,
they must have saw something that I didn't see.
Because now that we're parents, right?
Yeah.
Shout to Sky. So now that we're parents, I oftentimes think about how I would react if my girls came home and said, they didn't say anything. I just knew that they had ventured off and they're coming home, and the conversation that I'll have with Tyson, right, about like.
Right.
Because that while they didn't say anything to you.
Oh, they were definitely having
They were in the room like, what are we going to do? Like, should we say something? So in hindsight, you just kind of like reflect on those things. I was just curious about, whether or not, but giving you space was the right thing to do.
They did. They really did give me space. Now, funny enough, during that time, I had friends who would say, little snide remarks, which then landed them in a whole nother bucket in my life.
Oh, right. The onion, right? They on the outside of the onion.
Because, it's when you're from a small city like Memphis and you move away and you move somewhere like Atlanta, which is a big city. And, people are like, oh, what are you doing now when you go home on the weekends? You're like, oh, I live in Atlanta. I'm working. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's just the fact that you're living in the big city.
Super sexy to them, right?
So when you come back and you move back home and you're working part-time at the mall.
Yeah.
You're talking about fall from grace.
Right.
That's a fall from grace.
Right.
And it's, and so people are saying, so what are you doing here? So what do you, and they want this fancy title. And I'm just like, I'm working part-time at Brooks Brothers and working part-time filing papers,
Right.
And
that's okay.
Yeah, but at the time it felt so
like failure.
Painful to say it.
Right.
And even thinking back on that moment, I'd sometimes get very emotional because it was such a tough time. What I learned through that time, though, was I had to get rid of people's opinion. So I got to the place where I was saying, I'm working at McDonald's, because I had to say, I can't be bothered right now. I know that I have this goal in mind. And so I really have to get to a place where other people's opinion don't affect me in the way that it was affecting me at the time.
Right.
And so that was a much needed moment for me in my life.
It's huge. It's huge because then at that point, and we can talk about how that place where you were has aided you in, reaching out to sponsors and being rejected, like not being affected by the no, not being affected by the low, not being affected, right? So even like having to go back to Memphis and face the haters, or face people who really are rooting for you, right? And then be able to say, well, that didn't work out.
Exactly. And during this whole time, I'm still telling people that I'm moving to New York.
Right.
I've never, even when I was in Atlanta, I never stopped saying I'm moving to New York. And so for people to see me working at the mall and me still talking about moving to New York, so like what you see don't match up to what I'm saying.
What I am today is not what I'm going to be.
It just wasn't matching up.
Right.
And so people would say, Brandice, you're not moving to New York. Like I had people say that to my face. And people who I admired and people who I thought were in my corner. And they would say that because it really did not look like it was going to happen.
So it's interesting because I feel like, there's so much value. There was so much value to you moving to New York, right? And I guess, what did that represent to you? Now that you're here, right? Considering like what that meant to you when you were working in the mall in Memphis, and then now you having been in, like, you've been living in New York now for how long?
13 years.
13 years. So what did it mean to you? What did that I'm moving to New York mean to you then? And does it match up now to what you are having been here 13 years, right? I mean, I grew up here, so I don't know what that means to people.
Yeah.
So what did that mean to you?
So being from a place like Memphis, most of the people in my world had never even visited New York. So
Right.
it was almost like moving to another country.
It's like Never Never Land.
It was like moving to another country.
Right.
And for me personally, I somehow knew that my purpose was attached to this city. I can't explain it. I just knew it. And the first time I visited here, I was 25. So even when I was saying it all that time, I had never...
You'd never been.
I'd never been.
So fascinating.
So on my 25th birthday, I tell all my friends, we're going to New York for my 25th birthday. And so we did and had an amazing time. But the moment I stepped foot, I was like, I knew it. This was everything I thought it was. I was like, this is everything I thought it was going to be.
You weren't fazed by the traffic and the rude people and the horns.
It was all beautiful for me.
Wow.
Could have ate. I always say I could have eaten it for like lunch, breakfast, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow.
It was all, for me, it was all, everything I had ever wanted and expected. I got it in that trip. I was like, this was it.
That was it.
It was it. I knew it.
So 25th birthday, and then how long did it take? And I guess, so take us through how you transitioned from Memphis to New York.
So working that part-time job, filing papers at AT&T, there was a guy there. His name is O.C. Body. I'll never forget his name. And I'm filing. One day he walked up to me and he said, Brandice, what are you supposed to be doing? And I said, I'm supposed to be a buyer. I knew what he meant by the question. Like, I just knew it.
That's
and I
crazy.
said, I'm supposed to be a buyer. And he said, so why don't you apply for Catherine's? They have a buying office right here in Memphis. And I said, I've applied to them so many times. I've sent my resume. No one's responding back to me. He said, let me see your resume. I used to work for West Point, and I had to look at hundreds of resumes a day. And we would just go through resumes, and it would be yes, no, maybe, yes, no, maybe. He said, so let me see your resume and see what pile we would have put it in.
Holy wow.
And I said, okay. I showed him my resume, and he said, this would have gone in the no pile. He said, we have to fix this. And so he took me out to lunch, and we went to lunch, and every time he would make corrections to my resume, I would fix it, give it back to him. He would say, change this. And we did that for about a week. And I sent that resume that I had sent before, a revised one, I sent that back to Catherine's and got a call that day.
Whoa. Wow. And even those resume tips, the audience might be able to benefit from even some of the feedback. I mean, I know it's a long time ago now, but
I
but
still
that
use
feedback,
it.
right.
I still use it. You have to quantify everything. So we like to say on resumes what we did, but you have to say how well you did it and what impact that had. So it's
on
not
the company's
that,
bottom line, right?
Absolutely. And so it's not that, even something as simple as I greeted customers as they walk through the door. It's like, what did that result in? And how many customers did you greet per day? So it's, or I sent proposals out. How many proposals did you send out and what were the results? And so everything is about quantifying. And so all I had was basically a job description on my resume. He totally transformed it. And so I got that job at Catherine's. And while I was working there, I was working as an allocation analyst. I eventually got promoted to assistant buyer and then senior assistant buyer. And I believe in building relationships. And so my vendors would call me. Most of my vendors were based in New York. I was building relationships with them. One day I get a phone call out the blue from one of my vendors, and she says, hey, Brandice, we just broke the Victoria's Secrets account and we need new people. Baby asked me who did I think would be perfect for this role, and I told her you. Now, why would she pick me? And I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and she's in New York with all of the millions of people here. But she said, I told her she should hire you for this.
And that was your way to New York.
And that was my way to New York.
Oh, my God. And so we're going to break there. And when we come back, we'll get into, when she landed in New York, what happened next. And she's built a lot of businesses since she's been here. So let's hear all about it when we come back.
This episode is sponsored by Next Step Staffing, technical recruiting partner to Fortune 500 corporations like Johnson & Johnson, NBC, Showtime, and so many more. Next Step provides exceptional technical talent on a full-time or contract basis. We have a huge database of software engineers, web developers, and event technology specialists. Check us out at nsstaff.com. Mention that you heard about the company through Unexpected Success and receive 10% off of your first placement. Want to get added to Next Step Staffing's database? Contact us through nsstaff.com. Again, that's nsstaff.com.
Hey, and we're back. So now Brandice is in New York, and she knew that she was destined to be in New York. So now you're here. You have a job. Your job brought you here. You know you're supposed to be here, and you're working a major Victoria's Secret account. And so, what happens next?
So I am working for this company, and I enjoy it. I actually enjoy production.
So where do you move? You move to where'd you?
I moved to Harlem.
You moved to Harlem, okay.
I moved to Harlem, and a small studio in Harlem. And I knew that I liked my job a lot. You know, it was really challenging. I was learning production. I had never worked in production before in fashion. And so I was learning so many new things. It was the first time that I had the opportunity to travel overseas. So it was a really incredible experience, except I didn't love it.
You didn't love it. So again, like what you described.
I liked it, but I didn't love it. And
so you were going by, you had friends in New York, you went to social events, it was all good, but at the same time you still felt like you wanted to do more.
Yeah, I was like, this is nice, but there's something else that I'm supposed to be doing. And so let me just back up a little bit. So during this time while I'm working at my company, I'm working on the weekends, volunteering on the weekends at B.O. Yama. And it was an upscale men's boutique, because remember, I wanted to open a men's boutique. So he couldn't pay me, so I said, I'll work here for free. And so I worked on the weekends for free so that he could teach me how to do this business.
So it's so interesting, because one of the most consistent narratives that I've had with almost everyone that's been on has been work for free. Work for free so you can learn. So I just wanted to say that again to the audience. Like, you know, a lot of times when you don't know how to get into something, do it for free.
Absolutely. And I learned from that I did not want to open a men's boutique.
Oh, excellent. You're like, yes.
Don't want to do this.
Right.
But I had built an incredible relationship. And so I'm working at my job, working part-time at this boutique, and then I go to a fashion show with my friend Camila in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so we're at this fashion show that I think one of us had got an invitation to, and it wasn't Brooklyn Fashion Week. It was something much smaller at a restaurant. But while I'm sitting there, the idea hits me, I want to do this in Harlem. And it just would not leave me. That one thought would not leave me. And I think that's kind of how you know, like that's when your purpose finds you, because it's an idea that it just won't let you go. And so I kept thinking about this and talking about it. And so I just started planning it. And so the first person who I thought about to be involved in this, to be a part of this fashion show, was B.O. Yama, the person whose boutique that I was volunteering in.
Wow.
And of course he told me yes. Yes, and how can I get the other people to say yes as well?
Right.
And so, you know, it's just interesting sometimes when you think you're giving so much. Like, I don't think you can really ever give enough, because it always comes back. And so that was a way that I had no idea that it was going to come back to me in that way.
But it did.
I couldn't even dreamt that it would come back to me in that way, but it did. And so we did the very first show in Harlem at the River
And so you
Room.
produced the show. You produced the show.
I produced the fashion show.
Never having produced a fashion show ever in life.
Never.
It's just amazing.
But I knew apparel.
And how did you find the model? I mean, so how did all this come together?
I knew how to do apparel production, right? So my job, I did production. So, we did underwear. So getting the lace and the cotton and the fabric and everything to get to the factory on time to make sure that it was produced and all that follow up, right? So I think production is one of those skill sets that is transferable from industry to industry. And so I knew how to, start something from the beginning, make a task list, put dates to that task list.
Amazing.
And
so all of your previous skills that you had kind of picked up doing a number of different things just kind of came together.
They did.
And next thing you know, you're like, oh, I can utilize this skill that I learned from. It's just amazing.
They all came together. And so for me, getting the team for the fashion show was kind of a task within itself, because I was basically selling everybody I met. So if you had met me during that time, let me tell you, I would have been, Joy, I'm doing this event. It's so much bigger than me. I don't know what it is, but I know this is something that I'm meant to do. And it's going to be absolutely incredible. Here's what it's going to be. I already have.
So you were selling
all the
to
time,
anybody who would listen.
Anybody who would listen. But the thing was, I didn't realize I was selling. I was really that crazy excited about it. And I didn't see it. It wasn't like a strategic thing. Like, I'm going to strategically pitch this person for this.
Right.
What was coming out was pure passion. And so it sounded like sales, but people could tell that it was coming from a really pure place. And so people would say, okay, how can I help? What can I do?
And people wanted to help you as a result because they saw your passion.
Strangers.
So I guess, so it takes me back. I always ask this question. If you had to define your natural abilities, like your what your purpose, not necessarily your purpose, but what your natural abilities are to I guess, pursue your purpose, what would you say they are?
I think I am a natural gatherer of people. I am a natural leader. I lead by example.
Right.
I think, I have the ability to inspire others to and it could be to do anything. I think that's kind of a natural skill set of mine.
So you believe that your purpose is to what?
My purpose is to make sure that any designer of color that wants to pursue fashion as a career, and that's good, like really good,
right,
is able to do that with no boundaries.
Love it. And you know that in your core of your being.
Core of my being.
Love it.
I could cry sitting here saying it.
Me too. I had to swallow this now so I don't get emotional. Okay. So you produce a fashion show.
Yes.
You sell it even without knowing that you were selling it.
Mm-hmm.
You're passionate about it. You do the show. What happens? How is it?
I do the show. It's a hot mess.
Okay. That's fair. It's first show. How you start and how you finish, right?
Here's what's funny. Actually, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Like, I wish I could bottle up all of that feeling that was in the room that day and sell it, because I make a lot of money. But it was, when I say that it was a hot mess, I mean the production of it. There are just so many things I didn't know. So the audience had no idea that there was anything wrong. But, for
from
me,
your perspective,
my runway, we had to paint it like an hour before the event started. So it wasn't even dry when people got there. The backstage area, I didn't realize. Now when I go into a venue, the first question I ask is like, what's your electricity capacity? We're going to have blow dryers and, all these things. So, I know that some places we have to bring in a generator, and I just understand that now.
Right,
well, then
right.
I didn't know it. So power kept going out like several times that day. Designers or boutique owners were like getting super upset with me, because remember, they didn't know me. They didn't know me from Adam. They had trusted me with their brands, which none of them said yes the first time except Biyoyama. So I had convinced them after, pursuing them over and over and over and over to say yes. And finally they say yes, and they get backstage and the electricity is out. And so,
oh my God.
And the runway is not dry. So I have this kind of double pressure during this process that, man, these people have trusted me with this, and, these things are happening. And at some point I just kind of, it's interesting. Every time I get to a place where I'm just like, meltdown, which that's only happened to me 3 times in this whole process of doing
Only
HFR.
3 times.
Only 3 times I've had 3 meltdowns. One was the first event.
Right.
And every time that's happened, like, I feel like God has always sent somebody to me to kind of reroute my perspective.
Right.
And so in this particular instance, it was my PR person, and there was one other guy, and he said to me, look, Brandice, here's the deal. Just close the door. I've seen this done before. Close the door. Don't let people in. Just because the show starts at 7, don't mean the doors have to start at 7. What's going to happen is a line is going to form. People are going to think it's hot and it's going to work out. Let's give the runway time to dry.
Excellent.
And I was like, is that going to work? Are people going to be upset? Because I didn't know
People
New York
pleasing.
like that.
People pleasing.
Yeah,
People pleasing.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I said, we'll do it. I was like, if that's, the solution that we have, do it. Because I'm like, we can't have people come in here and the runway is wet and they're just sitting there.
Right.
It's better to have them standing outside wondering what's happening inside. And so, so the first event, there was a lot of challenges that happened. But once that event started, everybody was happy. The designers were happy. The models were happy. The audience was happy. And though it was such an imperfect event, it was so perfect. I think everybody who left there, it wasn't what they saw, it was what they felt.
Right.
And so I think they felt the heart behind it.
And they felt proud also, right?
Yeah,
seeing these designers.
Absolutely. And I think they felt the heart behind it. They felt the spirit behind it. And so sometimes you can be in an event and it's not that great of a venue. And,
right.
The event is okay. But then you
can
feel something that's so incredible and you leave out of there and you're like, that was such an amazing experience. I want to
feel that again. Right.
Right. And so that was, and that has been what we've really tried to keep this entire time.
That's amazing. And so I had the benefit of going to a few of your fashion shows, and you graduated a great deal from whatever that venue was you mentioned. What was that venue?
The River Room.
No shade on River Room,
Yeah.
but I saw you at Lincoln Center.
Yes.
Right. 3 years in a row. I went before the second baby came, which threw me. Still have not recovered from that. Right. But and I mean, we had the models. We had, who was there? Who was? I think it was Nicole. What's not Nicole Murphy. Nicole Murphy was modeling in the last show. I think I went
Nicole
to.
Murphy's
and
was there. We've had Vanessa Williams was at the one you were at.
Right.
We honored Tyson Beckford.
I was, and I'm in the audience, geeking out. Dude. And the designers, and I don't know all the designers by name, but I was blown away. And then you also had like the trunk shows that would take place before the actual fashion show. So the day before, during Fashion's Night Out, we could actually shop the designers.
Yes.
And I got some amazing pieces. I still wear my Lois London dress every moment that I can.
I love
it. So how did you even go into that piece of it, right? Because you kind of like broadened everything from fashion shows to then partnering with the brands to help them do trunk shows.
Yeah. So, I'm still, to be honest with you, I'm still on this journey of finding the solution, right? That's probably my life's journey.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll get into a place where I feel like, okay, we've done it. This is it. And so, the fashion show is great because it gives the designers an opportunity to show their collections, and our events are invite only. And so they're showing them to an audience that can actually help push their brands forward. So it's editors and press and buyers and influencers. But then there also needs to be a way for people to actually purchase the collection. And so that's when we started doing the pop-up shops. And so that was a way for people to, for them to get the press, but also for them to get the revenue through sales.
Right, because when they're participating in the actual fashion show, there's no money associated with that. And so ultimately these designers, I imagine, need to make some money to fund their collections, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay. So Harlem's Fashion Row is a success, and it's also, and you're constantly working on it to make it be what you had envisioned it to be.
Yes.
And that, like you said, it's your lifelong journey. But in order to produce events of this scale, I saw Harlem Fashion Show at Lincoln Center during Fashion Week. Where'd you get the money? I'm like, how do you produce events like that? Because you went from, having to wait for the runway to dry to, I have pictures that I will post on social of these just amazing, there is no better venue.
Yeah, we've graduated. We've definitely graduated. And I knew that when I first started, one of the ways that I could fund these events was through event sponsorships, through partnering with brands. But I had no idea how to make that happen.
Wow. And so you wrote a book about it.
And so I wrote a book about it.
And so we're going to conclude this first episode with Brandice Daniel. She is a force. Goosebumps. And so we're going to find out how she found the funding from corporate sponsors to pay for events at Lincoln Center. All right. See you at part 2.
This podcast was brought to you by 23DB Productions, ID Productions, and One of One Productions. For more information, go to Facebook and Instagram, Unexpected Success with Joy.